Clips of Ludwig at Streamer University have been popping off lately.
I want to say I didn't do my homework. You're a pathetic excuse for a creator if that's your first video.
And with great reason. Ludwig did a great job as a teacher at Streamer University, and he even won the Best Professor Award for the whole week. I wanted to break down some of the clips and what made his class successful as a real-life school teacher myself.
Yeah, that's what I would have did.
My name's Ryan, and I'm in the summer before my 5th year of teaching. I've taught both middle and high school so far, and I even teach at a college on the weekends, although I wouldn't say I'm a professor just yet. I teach band and orchestra, as well as some other music classes, and plenty of lecture-based classes like the one that Ludwig taught here at Streamer University. So on his VODs channel, he has a full video up of all 4 days of his teaching plus his office hours. So I'm going to link this in the description if you want to watch. I highly recommend taking a look at his classes, especially if you want to be a content creator. So a couple things before we even press play. I love that as students are going to enter his class, he has a question on the board for them to already be thinking about. That's something that schools love, especially when you get observed by an administrator. I think it's something called the Danielson model is what they use for when you're getting observed. And one thing they love is when you have learning targets up on the board right away. And the goal is that they're supposed to already be thinking about it. Middle school, high school, it takes some pushing to get them to actually work on it.
All right, y'all. Do you hear my voice clap once? Do you hear my voice clap twice? Sarah, sit the fuck down.
Okay, a couple things right there. One, as a real teacher, you're probably not going to let students curse in your class. Even at the college level, I think this is something that you gotta dissuade, just to make it a safe environment for everyone to, sit and learn from. They're all streamers making content, so, I don't blame Ludwig for not saying anything, of course. It's just, if this were a real class, you dissuade that right away. Another thing right away is that he has a great technique to get the attention of the class. He said, if you hear my voice clap once, if you hear my voice clap twice, and we as teachers have so many little techniques to get the attention of a class, especially in the very first minute of it. As a band and orchestra teacher, I kind of taught my students that once I step on the podium, we are ready to start class. I might just give a downbeat with my baton and we're ready to begin. One little inside joke my class and I we've come up with is the shut up sheep. And I make a little sign with my hand like this. It looks like a sheep. And that is the shut up sheep. One of my students came up with that name. When I get up on that podium, put up this hand sign, everyone knows we quiet down.
Guys, we are now starting. There's 2 people outside. Should I let them in? I'll leave it up to you guys.
No! No! Yes! They're late.
No, they're late. Show of hands if I should let them in. All right? Keep those hands up. What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, hands down. Hands up if you think I shouldn't let them in.
So he's actually doing something subtle here that maybe he doesn't even realize, but right away he's engaging the class before it's even started, and he's doing it in disguise. Should I let these late students in? One, we're setting the expectation of our class that if you're late, you might not get into class. You have to be here. You have to be present. So one, he's setting the expectation, you're here present for my class. The other thing he's doing here is he's already getting this class involved by raising your hands. It's just increasing engagement right away. Oh, I'm here. I'm present. We're going to be asked to do stuff already. We're engaging the class, which is great. Making sure everyone's awake.
Class just voted to let you in. They just voted to let you in. Bring it over.
Another thing that did with setting expectation is now students know. He taught this class for 4 days, so students know word's going to get around days 2 through 4 that you might not make it into Professor L's class if you are late. You just might not make it. Having that word of mouth with the students is also very important. One of my mentors always said to me that good teaching is preventative. How can you prevent things from going wrong to your best of your ability? One is making sure students are there in your class. You set the expectation day 1. If you're late, you might not make it into my class. So days 2 through 4, they're going to show up.
I realize this has a bit of a sexual innuendo. It is not sexual, but I truly believe to be a successful streamer, you need to get lucky. I think every streamer has had a moment they can refer to where they got lucky, but it's about capitalizing on that luck. Being prepared for when that luck strikes, all right? So here it is. This is my first question I had for y'all. Did anyone have a thought on it?
So it's great. First thing of the class, you had the question up on the board, and now we're addressing it right away. It's not just there for show. You set the expectation that we're going to talk about this right away. And again, that's something administrators love.
The most important thing I want you to take away from this class is that you need to be delusional. All right? Right.
So up on the board, Ludwig has be delusional, which is something that students are going to react to right away. It's, oh, what do you mean be delusional? And I think this plays on his strength as a YouTuber and content creator that, they're good at clickbaiting. So this is kind of like an example of educational clickbait. You want them to react. You want your class to react, and you want them to ask questions about it, but then you go on to explain it.
All right, the class is called How to Get Lucky. A little background for y'all on who I am. I am Professor L, all right? If you don't know me, Streamer of the year.
Oh.
What was that?
That was Bonnie right there.
So uncalled for.
What was that?
Extremely uncalled for.
No, chat was saying loser. I was like, loser? What are you talking
Bonnie,
about?
everyone gets 1, 2, you're out.
It's very funny seeing this because they're really acting like my middle or high schoolers. Someone's calling out, ooh, and someone rats them out right away, and everyone's reacting. It's really like what it feels like to teach high school now too, which is kind of funny these streamers are doing it. Another example of Ludwig setting expectations, he said everyone gets 1, 2, you're out. I don't know what you're out means, but he's setting the expectation right away. Okay, I'll give you 1. Everyone gets, a chance to, and you can redeem yourself. You can change your behavior, but calling out, making side comments is not going to fly like that. He's also calling himself Professor L, and that's a very real teacher thing is, you'd be Mr., and just your first letter of your last name. Very common teacher thing. I'm sure you knew teachers growing up that just went by their first initial of their last name, and I do it too sometimes.
Professor L, Streamer of the Year 2021. Bonnie, do you have one? Ooh, shit. Content Creator of the Year 2022. You got one? Oh, shit. Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay, now he's just clip-barring a bit. I wouldn't keep pushing the student, especially after you already gave him a warning. But it's content. It's whatever. I want to talk quick about the uniform of a teacher, and for a college professor, I think he's got it bang on. Collared shirt, tie. You got long pants with the belt. I do this too where I roll my sleeves all the way up. I'd probably have that top button done and the tie all the way up, especially if I'm trying to look formal. But the uniform of a teacher, it's kind of different public to private school. Private school now, every Wednesday, we have formal Wednesday. And so you have to wear the full suit jacket, button-up shirt, tie, everything. Dress shoes. So, and the students have that uniform as well. So for me, every Wednesday is formal Wednesday. We have to look really put together. Public school, not as much. The classic go-to look of especially a male teacher, if you teach in middle school or high school, is just going to be a quarter zip sweatshirt. Maybe you have a button-up shirt underneath. Sometimes no. When it gets hotter out like this, yeah, it's just button-down shirt, belt, pants, always pants. The other thing, especially at the middle and high school level, is you're gonna wear a lanyard. All teachers get like an ID key card. You're probably gonna have that just worn on you at all times, especially for safety. Probably not in college, if you're at the professor level. I'm sure professors have, key cards and everything too. But for my work, I wear a lanyard with my key card. It's got my picture on there, my name, it's got where I work on there. And the students usually have a key card as well, or some sort of ID from the school. Just part of my look that I like to rock is I always have a watch on my left wrist, especially if I'm wearing a short sleeve kind of button-down shirt. I like to complete the look with a watch.
All right, I want to talk a bit about, excuse me, I skipped ahead too much here. All right, there we go. All right.
One thing as a teacher that's a really worthwhile investment is having just a clicker to go through all your slides. It's unfortunate he has to keep going back and forth. Like he wants to point at things on the board and kind of be around the room, but he has to keep going back to his laptop to click ahead. As a teacher, I love having just a clicker. That way you can just roam the room as well. One thing that was really stressed to me as a young teacher is that it's important to be present around the room. If you are, proximally close to a student, they're going to pay more attention and be more alert. So one thing I have, a little clicker to go through my slides, and I'm actually mulling, up and down between my students sometimes. Just make sure I'm using proximity as a tool. I'm right there. You're going to be paying attention because I'm standing right over you. And obviously, they're middle schoolers, so they're small. Being around the room and being able to click through your slides is important. I caught a peek of his phone there, and I think he has some notes for himself as well. Very common thing as a teacher. Sometimes I often teach with a clipboard in front of me. If there's any notes that I feel like I really need or stuff I really want to hit, I'll have a little clipboard with just some notes for myself. And very often, I'll give that piece of paper with my notes to my students as well. So they have just a second representation of what I'm talking about. This is more of a thing maybe at the middle school level is where they're not as fluent at taking notes. I'll have a little handout for them and maybe there's some fill in the blanks for them. But it's important for them to actually write things down, have it in front of them, and also be able to look up on the board. A huge thing about teaching is differentiated instruction, which is where you're going to have some learners that are ready to go way beyond what you're on. And you're going to have some learners that, maybe have an IEP or a 504 plan, which means they might have a learning disability, and they're going to need a little bit extra help, might be a little bit slower actually taking down notes or keeping up with you. So one plan for making sure that's okay, you have a little handout for them, or you have the slides posted online so they're always able to take a look at it. It's nice that this class is just entirely streamed, so you can always go back and watch the VOD if you missed something.
Everyone, do me a favor, check under your chairs. Check under your chairs, everyone. Everybody check under your chairs right now. All right, okay, who got a star?
Me! $10,000!
Oh, we got our gold star!
Wow.
One thing I've been continually surprised about is how much students, especially the high schoolers, love prizes. I was so surprised at how motivated high schoolers would be from earning a gold star sticker. Literally, before I started teaching this year, I went to like a dollar store and I just got a pack of stickers, and it's smiley faces and it's stars. And I use that as motivators throughout the year. As a band teacher, we work through a method book. And so once we finish a certain song in the method book, boom, gold star for finishing it. You know, you played it in front of your classmates, you played it for me, boom, I'll give you a gold star when you're done. And they'll love it. They'll actually practice just to earn that gold star. So that's something cool Ludwig's doing. He's playing a little game with his class. Yeah, I'll check under your chairs, see if you have a sticker. But that's something very real. Students are prize motivated.
This is an activity. I want you guys to all be doing this right now. This was your homework. If you did it, good. If you didn't, do it now. Pen and paper. Pen and paper right now. If not, you can put it in your phone right now. That is fine. But I need you to write this down later.
So this is cool. It's something he made homework before the class, which is, write down your 3 streaming goals, whatever it might be. And he's pulling it into class, incorporating it right away. It's nice he's actually giving them a chance, do it now if you haven't already done it. But I really like that he said pen and paper. So much of teaching, especially nowadays in 2026, is digital. Everyone's in a Google Classroom, or maybe use Canvas for your school. All these students have laptops assigned to them, but there are studies that show if you actually write something down physically, piece of paper with a pencil, you will remember it more, or it'll be more impactful for you. It also makes you go a little bit slower. Most people I know can type a little bit faster than they can write, so having to take the time and write it out, you'll be surprised your hand starts cramping up, but it will make you go a little bit slower, retain a little bit more of that knowledge.
I only have 2 pens.
And there's always going to be a student who doesn't have a pencil, who doesn't have paper, has to ask someone else to borrow it first. I make it a point to have in my classroom a little bin of a whole bunch of pencils. So if someone needs something, we look, oh, it's in the bin, grab a pencil, grab a piece of paper. As a band and orchestra teacher, I know someone's going to forget their binder of music. So I have extras of the copies of the music. They all know where it is. It's on this one cart inside of the classroom. Oh, I don't have your music? Go check the cart. Everything's there for you. Again, good teaching is preventative. How can we put out fires before they even begin? We're anticipating a problem before it arises and before we have to deal with it as a teacher. Can a student solve it so I can help another student with something that I wouldn't have been able to if I had to take time finding you a pencil?
Why do you want to lose weight?
Because I'm fat.
Now, are you saying you're fat, or do you feel bad when you walk around?
No, I feel like I can.
Are people calling you fat? Does chat call you fat?
You are not that fat.
Oh,
damn. What the fuck is that?
You are not that fat?
Sometimes you'll have students, especially middle and high school level, it's a weird time because middle school, you're kind of going through puberty and you're kind of just being a teenager, especially into high school. And so you'll often encounter students with negative self-talk. I think that's the one streamer here was like, oh, I'm fat or whatever it might be. But as a teacher, you got to be prepared to deal with that. Am I going to uplift this student? I think it's not something you'd want to agree with. So Ludwig asked some great follow-up questions. Do people call you fat? Is that's something I actually need to know about as a, harassment, intimidation, bullying, HIB thing for the school. You might need to report that, or it might be something you want to check in one-on-one with the student about. So are people calling you fat? Is it the way you feel when you walk around? Is it something going on intrinsically? So it's subtle, but that's actually something you do as a teacher. How can I diffuse this negative self-talk? Is it something we need to look into further?
It was Victor.
Guys, show of hands. Did anyone here not write something down? My genuine advice at this point, and I do not say this with malice in my heart, you should probably quit streaming.
That's wrong.
I do not think you are cut out for what it takes to be a full-time streamer if you are not willing to put the work in right now to do such simple things as laying out the goals for what you want for yourself.
But part of the experience of being a college student is you are paying to be there. Choosing to be here and still not doing the work, maybe it's not for you. And I've known a lot of students, my friends included, who have switched majors because it wasn't for them, or they genuinely were not doing the work, or people have dropped out of college and have done something else with their time and with their, the couple years that you would have gone to college. That's another thing you encounter, especially being a band and orchestra teacher, is that band and orchestra is an optional class. You don't have to be in the band or orchestra program. Most schools have it as an optional thing. Maybe you split off and do choir, you do orchestra, you do band as like an optional elective. Maybe you take like a music appreciation class if you don't do one of those 3. But it's an optional thing to be in. if you don't show up and do the work, if you don't practice, maybe this is not for you. And that's a conversation you have to have as a teacher with a student. And that's a tough conversation sometimes, especially if a family has, rented an instrument for the school year and their students not been practicing. My go-to thing is, do you hear them practice at home? How often have you seen the flute get taken out at home? Maybe never. You come to see your kid play in the concert and they're just pretending to finger along. Maybe it's not for you. That's just a tough conversation you have to have with the student. They're here, they're present, but they're not putting in the work.
In your dreams, what you got for me?
Please use the bathroom.
Yeah, you can use the bathroom.
Thank you.
Also, I'm so sorry. The signal.
That's funny, student raising her hand asking to use the bathroom. Again, insanely real. And once one student does it, everyone starts asking to use the bathroom. And very quickly, a line builds up of students who are queued to use the bathroom, and you have to remember who it is. Many schools will have a bathroom pass or a bathroom sign out. They have to go sign out, go down the hall, scan your ID, before going to the bathroom, that kind of thing. And a lot of students just like to use going to the bathroom as just a brain break. Sometimes it's really just a brain break or a walk that they need.
If you have a vision of what you want to execute it, you have to communicate it, okay? So if you want to do a 24-hour stream, that is your idea, okay? What you want to do in that stream, you have to communicate to your cameraman, to your editors, your clippers during it, your editors after it, okay? Really own the entire process of what you are going to do. Don't just spark stream and expect some shit to happen, okay? Own the vision, own the process.
Obviously, you can tell that Ludwig speaks very articulately. He speaks well. It's like a declarative kind of tone. It's an easy voice to pay attention to and grab you, which, that's maybe a skill as a streamer that he has already, recording intros and recording content. He also uses a lot of hand gestures in his teaching. It helps the students stay engaged. There's just a little bit more weight to everything you're saying when you use some hand gestures. There's one thing that maybe it comes with giving a presentation, but it's something that every teacher has, is a sort of word they tack on as like a word of reassurance or trying to convince the class. It's almost like it's a formal version of saying or in a conversation. And Ludwig happens to say okay a lot with like a question mark at the end. So he happens to use this okay a lot. Mine, I always say, is right. I'm talking, or like I just did it there. So I'll say or right a lot in my teaching. We're gonna watch this back again and listen to how Ludwig adds okay at the end of everything he's saying.
You have to communicate it. Okay? So if you want to do a 24-hour stream, that is your idea. Okay? What you want to do in that stream, you have to communicate to your cameraman, to your editors, your clippers during it, your editors after it. Okay? Really own the entire process of what you are going to do. Don't just spark stream and expect some shit to happen. Okay? Own the vision, own the process.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that once you notice it, it's never going to go away. Another kind of situation that happens is when you are less rehearsed on what you are teaching. I have a feeling that Ludwig planned out really well his first, maybe even his second day of teaching. And he has great slides obviously here, but he hasn't maybe rehearsed it in his head as much, because when you're just spitballing, when it's off the dome, you'll add in those little filler words, those little words of reassurance to help, it's almost like a word of assurance to help convince the class you know what you're talking about and pull everyone into the same boat. It's a little bit of like a subconscious, cheap way to do it. It's something that every teacher has, especially when you haven't talked through your content all the way.
Beware of scaling up too fast. I made this mistake. I started a company called Off-Brand Productions. The idea was I would make events for other streamers. It was an ambitious project. I hired a team of 30 people.
One thing I like that he's doing, he's pulling in a personal anecdote as well. Something that makes you really relatable to your students that said, this is something I mess up a lot too. Or, you show a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of weakness as a teacher. It humanizes you a little bit, but it shows your students it's okay to make mistakes. Here's one that I made. He's talking about his company Off-Brand here. Had to close. He had to lay off employees, but he's showing them learn from something that I learned. This is a mistake that I made. It does a great job of humanizing you and makes you more relatable to your students.
And I think almost every single one of you in this room, basically without exception, sucks at YouTube.
That's true.
Let's be honest.
He does such a great job of using this clickbait, flashy, alarming titles in his teaching that gets the class reacting, gets the class talking. You suck at YouTube. What, me? You know, and it gets you thinking right away. He does a great job, and that comes from the skill of being a title and thumbnail creator as a YouTuber.
Raise your hand if you think you suck at YouTube. I looked through almost all your channels.
He also adds, you know, raise your hand if you think you suck at YouTube, engaging the class. Something that I do to engage my class, or we kind of do like these informal understanding checks as a teacher. Something that I use so often is give me a thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Really quick way I can just scan the room, see not only who's giving me a thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down, who's not doing it. Maybe they weren't paying attention, maybe they don't know how they feel. But it's a quick way for me to take a look around the room and see, okay, I'm good to move on. Or, oh, okay, maybe we need to reinforce some of this stuff. Or maybe it's work they need to do at home. So just a little understanding check. And Ludwig does a good job with the raising of hands a lot throughout this and taking questions. But just another informal technique we use as a teacher so often. Getting the temperature of the room.
Guys,
Wait, dead at?
I looked through all your channels.
Okay, tell me the last thing I posted.
The Mighty BA, you posted your first video. It's pathetic. It's an embarrassment. It's called I Play Fortnite with a Transgender. It has 3... You want to say I didn't do my homework? You're a pathetic excuse for a creator if that's your first video. Hey! I don't want to hear you speak up one more time in class. You're out. I'm being serious. What you got for me?
Okay, so that's a big risk to take as a teacher, but sometimes it's warranted. Sometimes you have to call out a student in front of the whole class. You know, this one's, the student tried to chump check him. You know, you haven't actually seen my stuff. You know, no way you checked all our stuff. Part of the work of being a teacher is making sure you are prepared for your class. And, you know, you have to do that. You know, that looks like, you know, grading the homework you asked them all to submit. Or as a music teacher, making sure I know the music well enough to be able to teach them. Maybe I'm teaching a saxophone lesson. I need to make sure I know my saxophone fingerings well enough to teach them. This student's chump checking me. I do know my stuff. I am the expert in the room. That especially is a thing as you're a younger teacher, especially if you're teaching high school. You might only be 4 or 5 years removed from being a senior in high school when you start teaching. So these students might have a kind of a power dynamic. Every student's gonna try to press you and poke your buttons a little bit, maybe especially as a substitute teacher if you're not the main teacher in the room, or if you're a co-teacher. They're gonna try to give you a little pushback and see what they can get away with. He shuts it down right away. The way he did it was, I've seen your content. It's a sorry excuse for content. You know, it's transphobic, I think is what he's trying to call out here. It's kind of risky to do that in front of the whole class, especially when he piles on, you're a sorry excuse for a creator if that's your first video. It's risky to do that because you could have a bad rapport with the student, and that could ruin the whole year. Now, Streamer University is only 4 days long, but it's kind of like their classmates. You know, they're all streamers in the same space, and something Ludwig says a lot is the relationships matter a lot in the streaming world. Having a risky altercation in front of the class like that with a student, there's a power dynamic at play. You know, sometimes you have to call out a student like that, especially if they're pressing you. You don't have to go further with it, but I know exactly the feeling of having a student that maybe gets on your nerves. Maybe it's day after day. Maybe it's been a couple weeks of this student getting on your nerves. And as a teacher, you have favorites and you have least favorite students. You just do. You know, it's how it goes. It's funny to think to yourself, I'm beefing with a 12-year-old. But sometimes you do. And you'll have bad and good days as a teacher as well. So it can happen. You get caught in a bad teaching day. You're not in a great mood. Maybe you didn't get a lot of sleep. Maybe you don't feel great about your lesson. And a student's pressing you. You can snap a little bit. It happens. It's going to happen over the course of your career. What's so important, and something that Ludwig did, is, you know, you have to mend this. You have to talk to the student afterwards. And he did do a one-on-one with the person that he calls out here. He sits down, has a one-on-one with him during his office hours. But he has a one-on-one. He sits down with the student and fixes that rapport. You know, make sure he has a good rapport with them. You have to check in with that student again, because you're going to see them all year. And if the student is a 9th grader and you teach high school, you're going to see them 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade in your school system. They're going to be the ones who are, hey, you should take Professor L's class. You know, he's someone you should learn from. You know, word of mouth is a big deal as a teacher, especially if you have an elective class for students to sign up for. So that was the big clip that I've been seeing making the rounds of his whole thing. Oh, it's savage. He called him out. You know, he chump checked him in front of the whole class, and boom, he got him. But that's a real situation. Tensions can boil over. So
This whole event's been pretty rough, right?
Really, it has.
What has made it difficult?
it's right here. Here he's checking in with them after the fact. You know, and they're having a one-to-one, which, you know, you don't always get the chance to with the student, but you got to make sure you try. So guys, that was just a little bit of, you know, me taking a look at some of these clips as a real teacher, giving my thoughts on it, maybe teaching you a little bit about what it's like to be an educator. And again, Ludwig knocked it out of the park. I thought he had great presentations. Some of the presentations he had stayed up late the night before working on, and that's so real. Staying up late to finish the slides you have for your lecture the very next day. I remember when I was a student teacher, this is like 4 or 5 years ago, every day I would have student teaching till the end of school. After that, I'd go to Panera with my laptop and work for like an hour or two, just making my slides for the next day, making sure I'm prepared. Especially as a student teacher, you have to write out all your lesson plans, your state learning standards, the objectives you want to hit on in every class. So there's a lot of prep work that goes in behind the scenes to actually be an educator. And having these 4 days where Ludwig had to prepare, and it was 4 different classes he taught, 4 different days, 4 different complete presentations. So a lot of respect for Ludwig jumping in here, becoming a teacher for a week. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, consider leaving it a like, consider subscribing to the channel. I've done some League of Legends content, but I want to branch out and be a little bit more variety. Maybe I have a thing or two to learn from Ludwig's presentations at Streamer University. But I'd love your support. I'm trying to hit 500 subscribers. So, you know, if you could do me a favor and hit the subscribe button down below. I've never beat Minecraft hardcore, and that's the one thing I want to do in the next couple weeks, as I have a little bit left of summer vacation, 1 more month. So if you want to stick around and see me try to beat Minecraft, drop a sub, and there's a link to my Twitch channel as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.